In the scorching desert plains of the Holy Land, an army of just over 1,000 men stood as the last line of defense for Jerusalem. This wasn't just another skirmish. This was a doy moment that would echo through history. This is the incredible story of the Battle of Ramla, where one king's insane courage turned a suicidal charge into one of the most legendary victories of all time. The year is 1101. The newly established Crusader kingdom of Jerusalem is fragile, surrounded by hostile forces. King Baldwin I, a man known for his audacity and iron will, receives terrifying news. A massive Egyptian Fatimid army, led by the vizier's son, Al-Abdel-Shahunshah, is marching on his kingdom. Their goal? To wipe Jerusalem off the map. Baldwin's scouts bring back the numbers, and they are staggering. The Fatimid army is said to have over 30,000 soldiers, a sea of men and steel aimed right at the heart of his kingdom. And what does Baldwin have to counter this invasion? A force so small it's almost laughable. He gathers every able-bodied man he can find, mustering a tiny army of just 260 knights and around 900 foot soldiers. Let's do the math on that. We're talking about 100-to-1 disadvantage, maybe even more. Any sane commander would have locked the gates of Jerusalem, prayed for a miracle, and prepared for a siege. But Baldwin was not a sane commander. He was a king who believed that fortune favors the bold. He decided to meet this overwhelming force head-on in the open field, leaving Jerusalem virtually undefended. Baldwin led his small band of warriors towards the coastal plain near the town of Ramla. His own men must have thought he was mad. This wasn't a battle, it was a suicide mission. As they marched, the sheer scale of the enemy became apparent. The horizon was black with the banners of the Fatimid army, stretching as far as the eye could see. The Crusaders were a tiny island in an ocean of enemies. The morale of Baldwin's men plummeted. Some reports say knights were deserting, convinced they were being led to their slaughter. Baldwin knew he had one shot, and it had to be perfect. He couldn't win a prolonged fight. He couldn't win a battle of attrition. He had to break the enemy's will in a single, decisive stroke. He addressed his men, not with false promises of an easy victory, but with a stark reality. If you wish to flee, he declared, do so. As for me, I will stay. He reminded them that they were the last shield of Jerusalem. If they fell here, everything they had fought for would be lost. Their families, their faith, their kingdom, all would be extinguished. His words, filled with grim determination, steeled their resolve. They would stand and fight with their king. As the sun climbed high over the plains of Ramla, Baldwin organized his tiny force. Standard military doctrine would be useless here. He needed something unconventional, something completely unexpected. He divided his already small army into 6 divisions. 5 of these would form the initial attack wave. The 6th, a small, elite reserve of his best 60 knights, he would command personally. This was his ace in the hole. He would hold them back, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The battle began. The Fatimid commanders, likely amused by the audacity of this tiny Christian army, watched as the first Crusader divisions charged. It was a glorious, but seemingly hopeless, assault. The knights lowered their lances and spurred their horses into a gallop, crashing into the Fatimid front lines. The initial impact was ferocious, as always with a heavy cavalry charge, but numbers are a brutal reality. The Crusaders were immediately swamped. The Fatimid army, a mix of Sudanese infantry, Arab and Berber cavalry, was a well-oiled machine. They absorbed the shock of the charge and began to envelop the Crusader divisions. One by one, the first waves of Baldwin's attack were annihilated. The Crusaders fought with the fury of desperate men, but they were being systematically cut down and overwhelmed. From his vantage point, Baldwin watched as his army dissolved into the enemy ranks. His plan seemed to be failing spectacularly. His initial assault force was being wiped out. For the Fatimids, victory seemed certain. They had crushed the main Crusader attack. They began to celebrate, with some soldiers even starting to loot the fallen. Their commander, whose name is recorded as Sod al-Dawla, watched the chaos with satisfaction. The enemy was broken. This is exactly what Baldwin had been waiting for. The Fatimid army, confident in their victory, had lost their formation. Their discipline was crumbling, replaced by the chaotic scramble for plunder. Their center, where the command tent stood, was now exposed and disorganized. This was the moment. Baldwin turned to his small reserve, the 60 knights he had held back. This was his final gamble. With a roar, he led them in a charge knot at the flanks, but straight into the heart of the 30,000-strong army. It was an act of pure, unadulterated madness. 60 knights charging an entire army. They galloped past the pockets of desperate fighting, where their comrades were making their last stand, their eyes fixed on a single target, the enemy general's banner. The Fatimids were caught completely off guard. They saw this new, fresh wave of heavy cavalry, appearing as if from nowhere, thundering directly towards their command center. Panic began to set in. Baldwin and his knights were a force of nature. They cut through the disorganized ranks like a hot knife through butter. Their target was singular: kill the general. Accounts from the time describe Baldwin himself fighting at the forefront, a whirlwind of steel and fury. He personally carved a path through the general's bodyguards and, in a climactic duel, struck down Sword al-Dawla. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic for the Fatimid army. The moment their general fell and his banner wavered, the loose discipline that held their massive army together shattered completely. A wave of panic ripped through the ranks. The general is dead. The cry spread like wildfire. The soldiers, who just moments before were confident of victory, now believed they were leaderless and doomed. Their numerical superiority meant nothing. An army without a head is just a mob, and that mob began to flee. It wasn't an orderly retreat. It was a full-blown, terrified rout. Soldiers threw down their weapons and ran for their lives, trampling each other in their haste to escape. The remaining crusaders, who had been on the brink of annihilation, now saw their chance. They rallied and joined Baldwin's charge, turning the Fatimid retreat into a gruesome massacre. The hunters had become the hunted. For miles, the crusaders pursued the fleeing army, cutting them down without mercy. The once mighty invasion force disintegrated into a panicked stampede. When the dust finally settled, the scale of the victory was unbelievable. The Fatimid army had suffered a devastating blow. Historians estimate that around 5,000 of their soldiers lay dead on the field of Ramla. Their entire invasion had been shattered in a single afternoon. And the Crusaders, they had paid a heavy price. Of the 260 knights who began the battle, 80 had been killed, a loss of almost a third of their elite cavalry. But they had survived. More than that, they had won an impossible victory. The Battle of Ramla in 1101 became an instant legend. The story of how a few hundred men, led by a fearless king, defeated an army 30 times their size, spread throughout Christendom and the Islamic world. It was a testament to the power of brilliant tactics, perfect timing, and the sheer force of will of one individual. Baldwin's gamble had paid off in the most spectacular way imaginable. His leadership didn't just win a battle, it saved his kingdom. This victory broke the yearly cycle of Fatimid invasions and secured Jerusalem's survival for decades to come. It proved that in the crucible of battle, courage and strategy can sometimes overcome even the most impossible odds. The legend of King Baldwin and his knights at Ramla serves as a timeless reminder that sometimes the boldest plan is the only one that can lead to victory. Thank you so much for watching. If you're fascinated by these incredible stories from history, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. We'll see you in the next one.